controlling the project. And what we need to keep in mind is that the goal of monitoring and preventing a project is to prevent problems rather than solve them. And that we link planning and control by monitoring project progress at milestones. So I'll say all that again, because I know some of you are writing. But the goal of monitoring and controlling the project is to prevent problems rather than solve them. We link planning and control by monitoring project progress at milestones.
Link, control,
Link planning and control by monitoring project progress at milestones.
So is that the monitoring and controlling, or is it just monitoring?
But we're
I know
linking
what
the
you mean.
two. Yeah, that's how you link the two, right? So I haven't got to the first term, if that's what you're asking.
Oh.
Monitoring, I'm just giving you an overall
Oh, okay.
objective.
Oh, that's the,
So
yeah,
you got your.
that's the title.
Okay, that's the title.
I didn't realize that, okay.
So there might be a couple,
Oh,
okay?
okay.
Sorry about that. When you get to monitoring it individually, what I'd like you to know is that monitoring is the collection, recording, and reporting of project information. And a couple points I'd like to make about monitoring and data collection in particular is we made the point, and the textbook makes the point, that you should focus on what's important to collect, not on what's easy to collect. And that's a common mistake we make of collecting the data that's easy to collect as opposed to what's important. The other point that we made, and it's made throughout this chapter in the textbook, is that it's easy to make a mistake that says, or assumption, that if 50% of the budget is complete, that 50% of the project is complete. And we know there's lots of reasons that that might not be true. We might, for example, in the first half of the project, acquire all of the materials we need to build something. So if you looked at it as budget alone and assumed it was 50% complete, might be very inaccurate. So 2 points. Focus on what's important to collect, not what's easy to collect. And second, don't make the assumption that if a budget is 50% complete, the project is 50% complete.
I erased that, it shakes the camera.
Okay. Controlling then is using monitored data and information to bring your actual performance into agreement with the plan. It's using monitored data and information to bring actual performance into agreement with the plan.
would you please say again?
Controlling is using monitored data and information to bring actual performance into agreement with the plan. Okay, data collection We have a number of different methodologies we use there. The first being frequency counts. We look at frequency counts, we're looking at a tally of occurrence. In other words, an example might be number of days you've gone without accident. You're just tallying an occurrence, the number of times something happens. Raw numbers are actual amounts. And examples there might be dollars spent, hours required, or pounds consumed. Subjective numeric are estimates of quality made by experts. Subjective numeric, estimates of quality by experts. An example there might be a ranking. You might ask someone who's an expert in a field to rank things in a particular order. Indicators and surrogates are used where it's difficult to find a direct measure. And an example we gave in class, I think, was we said if you have a temperature, that is an indication that you might have an infection. So something where it's difficult to find a direct measure, we look at an indicator like body temperature to tell us that we may be looking at an infection. Another one that's commonly used is years of experience as an indicator for expertise. And that's the one that I told you, never let someone interviewing you push you in that box of letting them tell you that years of experience are an indicator for expertise, because we know that's often not true. And then final verbal characteristics, or characterization, excuse me, are things, other variables that are difficult to measure. It might be something like you're measuring the team spirit of your group, or supplier cooperation. Maybe you're ranking your suppliers, but you leave a final subjective line where you can make some comments as to how easily a supplier is to work with. So it's other variables difficult to measure, such as, yes?
I think the example you gave in class was strength of relationship with a client.
Yeah. Yeah, that one too, you could see, yeah. Yeah. In the absence of those types of verbal characterizations, or a way to put some kind of weighted average to them, we'd make all of our decisions based on for example, if you made all your decisions based on price alone, you might end up working with a supplier that's very difficult to do business with, just because of the personality of the organization. Or a team member that might have you guys all know who those people. They've got all the technical knowledge in the world, but they're very difficult to work with. Nobody in this room, of course.
I can think of a few though.
Okay, earned value, EV, is simply the budgeted cost of the work actually performed.
Can you repeat that, please?
Yes, the budgeted cost of the work actually performed. The cost spending variance is the EV minus the AC. And the schedule variance is EV minus PV. The CPI, that's cost performance index. That's your spending or cost variance. And they calculate that as EV divided by AC.
By AC?
Yes. Your SPI, that's your schedule performance index. And we calculate that as EV divided by PV.
So the cost spending variance is EV minus AC?
Divided by.
Divided by. And the schedule variance is EV divided by PV?
Mhm.
PD? PD?
UV is in Victor.
Present.
As in variance, actually.
Variance.
But you're right, as in Victor.
What does it stand for, PD?
Is it PD or?
Price variance.
Price variance,
Price.
yeah. So scope creep, we all know what scope creep is. That's when our project grows, cause
Is what you meant.
we find more exciting things to do, or we like our team members. What you wanna know about it from the perspective of this chapter and for the final, is that it's the most common source of change, based on our natural tendency to want to improve.
These. Would you please repeat that one? Scope 3. Based on
Natural tendency.
Natural tendency to want to improve. felt like that all day. Meetings, we said a number of things about meetings, but one thing we said is don't have regular, what's that?
Waste of money.
Yeah, don't, avoid regular periodic meetings. Unless the flow of data is periodic. For example, accounting, it makes sense because you have accounting periods. So if the flow of data is regular, you can have a regular meeting, but in general, avoid regular meetings. Couple of other things we said about them, we said the chair should scribe the remarks. The logic behind that is that helps keep you on task. We also said don't attribute remarks. Because Ron knows, if Ron knows I'm taking meetings about his last class session with Dr. E, he might be far less tendency to be honest if he knows it's gonna say, well, Ron said this. Right? Don't attribute remarks. So reports, there are three primary types of reports: routine, exception, and special analysis. Example of special analysis might be if you have new materials or capabilities that didn't exist when you put your project plan together, or perhaps some new government regulation has come about that has created a new special situation. And then finally for chapter 7, we've changed control system. And through that, we evaluate each change formally to determine costs and benefits and to make a plan to obtain resources. That's the purpose of the change control system. I'll say that again. We evaluate each change formally to determine costs and benefits and to make a plan to obtain resources. And that is it. Oh, Bibi, you just missed chapter 7. Thank goodness for Amanda and her recorder, right? We'll get you taken care of.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing is Bibi Nazir, my student who is taking this independent study, is going to come to see me between 2 and 3:30.
Okay.
So if you want to come sit in my office and sit through that review, or anybody else who wants to sit through it twice is welcome to do that. Like I keep saying, my kids won't even listen to me once, let alone twice, so. All right, that's chapter 7. We'll move into chapter 8. To give you a sense of emphasis on the exam, there are 25 questions in chapter 7 and 15 from chapter 8.
So if we were gonna read one chapter.
Well, I think you'll read them all, right, Amanda?
Absolutely.
Oh, I'm gonna miss you. I can't have you for any more classes, can I?
Unless I fail.
No, that's not gonna happen.
Oh, that's you.
Oh.
So rude all the-
You can
I'm gonna
retake,
take this final.
you can retake the class you get, that you get to be graded. Just, try to
I
do
think
it.
it would be impossible to fail at this point, so, wouldn't it? You've already done your project. Okay, evaluating and terminating the project. Project evaluation, what is it? It's appraising a project relative to its initial or revised plan. appraising a project relative to its initial or revised plan. Another thing you might want to know about it is we should complete it at milestones. Remember we said we don't want to have meetings for the sake of meetings at regular intervals, but we do want to document or evaluate where we are at milestones. So there's a situation where we say there are 30 terms and 40 questions, there's probably 2 questions right there. Usually when I say, and another thing you might want to know, yeah. Okay. Audits. There are couple, in general comments about audits. If the purpose of them is if you can identify issues early, then you can find solutions earlier, easier solutions. Usually, typically, the earlier you identify an issue, the easier it is to find a solution for it. Early audits tend to be more technical in nature, where later audits tend to be more focused on schedule and cost. So a general audit is a brief investigation, limited by time and cost. We do a more detailed audit if the general audit finds something that needs investigation.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
No problem. We do a more detailed audit if the general audit finds something that needs investigation. And then we do a technical audit. A technical audit is one that's performed by an individual with special skills.
For a general audit, it's a brief investigation.
Limited by time and cost. So a lot of you spoke to the different types of termination in your project, so I know you're familiar with them, but we'll review them. If we're terminating by project extinction, what that means is that we stopped either because we were successful or because the expectation of failure was high. An example of the latter might be a pharmaceutical drug trial. You know, you're in the middle of it and you realize that you're going to be on, you do not have what you need to produce a successful product, so you end. Termination by addition is an in-house project completed and becomes a new formal part of the organization.
Will you please explain that one little bit?
Will I explain that?
Yeah.
Yeah, like the example they had in the textbook, I think, was 3M, when they came up with Post-it notes. They produced the product, they said this is going to be successful, so we made it a formal division of our company, 3M Post-it notes. They do that often with new products. So it's something that becomes a formal part of your organization, like any new product. Okay. Termination by integration, that's different because as opposed to perhaps it being a new division, it becomes a new formal part integrated within your organization, like a software system that's integrated throughout the entire enterprise. Standard part of your operation. Where termination by starvation refers to something that's not practical, but we keep it around for political reasons. It becomes a project in name only. Maybe we quit giving it budget dollars or quit having milestone meetings, but it's just out there. You should know the elements of the final audit report, and I'll list those for you. It's introduction, current status, future status, critical management issues, risk analysis, and final comments.
What?
Final
Okay.
comments. Mhm. And then the final report, well, first of all, understand that the purpose of a final report is to improve future projects. Purpose is to improve future projects. And that beyond that, the elements of it would be project performance, administrative performance, organizational structure, project teamwork, and project management techniques. And then finally about the project manager or termination manager, we say it's generally recommended that it be someone other than the project manager. And that a primary focus is to redeploy assets.
Will you repeat one more time, please?
Yes, it's generally preferred that it be someone other than the project manager. And a primary activity is to redeploy assets, whether that's a physical asset like a backhoe on a construction project, or it's the human capital that gets reassigned to other
You
projects.
said deploy assets.
Redeploy. Okay, any questions? Now, you're feeling pretty good about it, aren't you?
Yeah.
All right, we're scheduled next, just as a way of reminder, this final, after much debate, we finally decided it's Tuesday from 1 to 2:50. Next Tuesday at 1 o'clock. That's the extent of what I have, and we'll have their gentlemen ready to do your presentations?
Oh, thank you, I forgot about that.
Mr. Wayne.